Silence is not empty, it's full of answers the other person cannot escape. My friends, let me paint you a picture. Imagine standing in a crowded room, calling out to someone you love, but they don't turn their head. You wave, you wait, you hope, but they act like you don't exist. That's what being ignored feels like. It's like knocking on a locked door, hearing movement inside, but no one opens. And in those moments, your mind goes wild with questions. Do they miss me? Do they even think of me? Or was I nothing all along? Folks, this is the place where so many people lose themselves. They believe the silence means they've lost, that being ignored is proof they weren't enough. But let me break that lie right now. Silence never means you were worthless. It means you were too much for someone who couldn't handle your worth. Here's the truth, calm and clear. People ignore you, not because you don't matter, but because your presence reminds them of what they can't control. It's easy for them to act cold on the outside, but inside, silence becomes a storm. You think they're at peace because they don't reply. You think they've forgotten because they don't call. But have you ever noticed, my friends, that when the night gets quiet, the mind gets loud? That's when your absence starts echoing back to them. They scroll through their phone, see your name, and hesitate. They replay conversations in their head. They wonder what you're doing now that you've stopped chasing. That's not indifference. That's the beginning of their ego cracking under the weight of your silence. Let's be real here. Most of us are trained to believe that when someone pulls away, we must chase, we must explain, we must beg for clarity. But that's the trap, folks. That's the game their ego wants you to play. Because the more you chase, the bigger they feel. The more you explain, the more control they have. But here's where Stoicism flips the script. Epictetus said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond." You cannot control if they ignore you, but you can control the reaction that follows. And your reaction, silence, calm, dignity, is what begins to destroy their illusion of power. Think of it like this. A flame needs oxygen to burn. If you keep feeding it, it grows wild. But take the oxygen away, and the fire dies out on its own. That's exactly what happens when you refuse to react to their ignoring. They want you to panic, to chase, to prove your love. Instead, you breathe deep, stay calm, and let the silence speak for you. And trust me, silence is not weakness. It's the most dangerous weapon of all. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. They expect drama, they expect begging. But when you remain unshaken, when you stand calm like a mountain, their ego begins to collapse." I know what you're thinking right now, but what if they never come back? What if they never miss me? My friends, the human mind is wired to obsess over what it can't control. When you stop reacting, you become the one thing they cannot predict, the one thing they cannot own. That's when their thoughts circle back, again and again. They'll wonder if you've moved on. They'll wonder if someone else sees your value now. They'll wonder if losing you was the greatest mistake they ever made. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to say a word. The silence will do the work. So don't believe the lie that ignoring means they've won. Don't fall for the trick that your worth is measured by their reply. No, your worth was always inside you, unshaken, untouchable. What happens now is simple. You choose peace over panic, wisdom over weakness, calm over chaos. You let them think they're in control, while their own ego quietly eats them alive. And when they finally realize what they lost, it will be too late. That is the power of Stoic reaction. So here's where I want you to stop and take a breath, my friends. Look at how far you've come just by sitting in this silence. This isn't weakness, it's power. This is dignity. This is control. Now say it out loud with me. My silence is power. Let those words roll through you like thunder. And don't just think it, prove it. Write it down in the comments right now. Make it real. Because the moment you declare it, you claim it. That's how transformation begins. And listen, if this hit you in your chest, if it woke something inside you, don't just sit back quietly. Smash that like button so I know you felt it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and stay with me. Because this isn't just about heartbreak, folks. This is about building an unshakable you. This is about stepping into a version of yourself that no one can play with again. Your silence is your strength, your shield, your weapon. Claim it, comment it, and never forget it. You are untouchable. Number 1. The trap of chasing attention. My friends, let me take you into a moment we've all lived through, even if we don't always admit it. You send a message, maybe just a simple one. Hey, how are you? And you wait. Minutes pass, then hours, then maybe even days. No reply. And what's the first instinct that hits you? To send another one, to call, to do something, anything that might shake them out of their silence. Because deep down, you're thinking, if I try harder, they'll finally see my worth. It feels almost impossible to sit still when someone you care for turns their back. The heart starts racing, the mind fills with questions. Did I do something wrong? Are they with someone else? Why can't they just answer me? This is the trap, folks. This is where so many lose themselves, because the more you chase, the further they run. Think of it like water slipping through your fingers. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it escapes. And yet, we all do it. We all reach out, hoping that just one more message, one more attempt, one more proof of loyalty will finally flip the switch in their mind. But let's be brutally honest. Does it ever work? Does begging for attention ever make them respect you more? Or does it only feed their ego, making them feel like they hold the power, while you're the one chasing crumbs? Carl Jung once wrote, "The more you cling to someone, the more you lose yourself." And that's the ugly truth here. Every time you chase, you hand them more control. You think you're showing love, but what they see is desperation. I know what's running through your head, but if I don't try, won't they forget me? Won't my silence prove I don't care? That fear eats at you because rejection plays tricks on the mind. It whispers that your worth is measured by whether they reply. It tells you that if you stop reaching out, you'll vanish from their world. But that's a lie, folks, a dangerous lie, because the truth is, people don't forget the ones who loved them genuinely. People don't erase the loyalty that once carried them. In fact, the harder you stop chasing, the louder your absence rings in their mind. What disappears is not your worth. What disappears is their illusion of control. Let me give you a metaphor. Imagine a stage with two actors. One is performing their heart out, begging the crowd to pay attention. The other sits back in silence, watching. Who holds the power here? The one dancing desperately for applause, or the one who doesn't need the audience to move at all? My friends, the more you chase, the more you play the role of the first actor. You hand over your dignity, your calm, your control, for the chance of applause that may never come. But when you stop performing, when you sit back and let the silence stand, suddenly the script flips. They wonder why you're not clapping anymore, why you're not on stage, why you're not bending for their approval. And that's when their mind begins to turn. Here's the Stoic truth. You cannot control whether they ignore you, but you can control whether you beg for their attention or stand calmly in your silence. Epictetus taught that it is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Being ignored doesn't destroy you. It's the way you judge it, the way you decide it means you're unworthy, that causes the pain. So change the judgment, reframe the silence, see it for what it really is, not proof of your weakness, but proof of their blindness, not the end of your story, but the start of your strength. But I won't sugarcoat it. This is not easy. Every nerve in your body wants to react. You want to prove they lost something valuable. You want to shake them and force them to recognize your worth. It's like standing in front of a locked door with all your strength screaming, push harder, maybe it'll open. But what happens when you keep pushing on a locked door? You waste your strength, you hurt your hands, you end up exhausted. The Stoic move, the wiser move, is to step back, take a breath, and recognize that the locked door was never your home. You don't need to force your way in where you're not welcomed. Instead, you turn around and find the doors that open naturally, without resistance, because they were meant for you. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists." The more you resist their silence by chasing, the stronger it becomes. The more you push, the more they pull away. But when you let go, when you don't resist, their silence loses its power. Suddenly, they're left with their own thoughts. And here's the secret, my friends. The human ego thrives on being chased. It thrives on knowing it has control. But the moment you stop feeding it, the moment you walk away, that same ego begins to starve, and starving egos panic. They replay the messages you sent before. They wonder why you stopped. They start questioning if maybe, just maybe, you've moved on, and that thought alone begins to eat at them in ways your words never could. Picture this. At first, they laugh when you go quiet. They smirk, thinking, I knew they'd give up. I won. But then a week passes, then two. And suddenly, the silence isn't so funny anymore. Suddenly, they're the ones refreshing their phone, wondering if your name will light up their screen. That's the irony. When you stop chasing, they become the chaser in their own mind. And all you had to do was stay calm, stay silent, and let time do the work. So the next time you feel that itch to send another text, to chase, to prove your worth, pause. Ask yourself, am I acting from strength or from fear? Am I protecting my dignity or handing it over? And then remember this, real love, real respect, real connection never requires chasing. It never demands you lose yourself to hold on to someone else. The ones who see your value will never make you beg for it. My friends, this is your moment to choose a different reaction, to step out of the trap of chasing and into the power of self-control, because silence, when chosen with strength, is louder than 1,000 words. It is the storm that unsettles their ego, the mirror that forces them to face their emptiness, the proof that you never needed them to validate who you are. So let's seal it together right now. Say it with me. I will not chase. Write it in the comments. Prove it to yourself, not just in your mind, but in action. And if this truth shook something inside you, if it gave you that calm strength you were searching for, then hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and stay with me. Because this journey isn't about making them miss you. It's about reminding you that your worth was never in their hands. Your silence is your power, your calm is your weapon, and your refusal to chase is the moment everything begins to shift. Number 2, why silence makes noise in their mind. My friends, let me tell you something that most people never realize until it's too late. Silence is never as simple as it looks. On the surface, silence feels like nothing is happening. You don't text, you don't call, you don't explain yourself. It looks still, like a pond with no ripples, but beneath that still water, the human mind is in chaos. Because silence is not empty, silence is loud, and the louder your silence grows, the more it begins to echo in their mind. Picture an empty room. At first, it seems peaceful, just four walls and quiet air. But sit there long enough, and you start to hear things. Every creak in the floor, every faint sound becomes magnified. That's what happens when you stop reaching out. Your absence becomes a noise they can't turn off. They thought ignoring you would give them peace, but instead it's like they're stuck in that empty room, haunted by echoes of your voice, your laughter, your presence. Every unanswered question circles back, louder each time. Why haven't they texted? Why aren't they fighting for me? Did they really move on? The brain hates unanswered questions, folks. It hates open loops. And when you go silent, you create the biggest loop of all. Psychologists call it the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency of the mind to obsess over unfinished business. And what could feel more unfinished than you suddenly withdrawing your energy? They were used to your messages, your loyalty, your constant reassurance. You were like background music in their life, always there, always playing. But the moment you press stop, the silence crashes in, and they can't ignore it. They may act cool on the outside, post pictures, pretend like nothing's wrong, but on the inside, their thoughts are chasing themselves in circles. Silence forces them to imagine, and imagination is far more powerful than reality. Think about it. When someone doesn't respond, what do? You start filling in the blanks. Maybe they're busy, maybe they're with someone else, maybe they don't care anymore, and each possibility cuts deeper than an actual answer. That's why silence is so dangerous. It makes the mind its own enemy. The one being ignored starts wondering what's wrong with them, but the one doing the ignoring? They start wondering what you're doing in your silence. And the longer it lasts, the more their ego feels threatened. It's like being in a dark hallway with a locked door at the end. They know you're behind it, but they don't know what's happening inside. At first, they might smirk, thinking, I know they'll knock again. But when you don't, doubt creeps in. Why aren't they knocking? Are they building a new world in there without me? Are they happier now that I shut them out? My friends, the unknown is terrifying, and silence creates an unknown that eats at their confidence. Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That's exactly what silence does. It drags their hidden fears out into the open. Their fear of being replaced, their fear of not being enough, their fear of losing control. And suddenly, while they were laughing at your quiet, they're now lying awake at night, haunted by thoughts they can't silence. Your absence becomes a mirror they can't avoid, reflecting every insecurity they tried to bury. And this is why silence makes more noise than words ever could. Words can be denied, argued with, twisted, but silence leaves nothing to fight against. It leaves them alone with themselves. And that's the one battle they can't win. They'll replay your last conversations. They'll scroll through old messages. They'll look for clues in every memory. Did you ever love them? Do you still? Are you gone for good? Silence forces them to write stories in their head. And those stories always end with them realizing they lost something valuable. So don't underestimate the power of not reacting. It may feel like nothing, but it's everything. It's the move that unsettles their mind, breaks their illusions, and forces them to hear echoes they thought they'd silenced. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That's the Stoic's advantage. You don't need to scream to be heard. You don't need to fight to win. Sometimes the most powerful move is to stand still and let their own imagination do the damage for you. So let's claim this truth together, my friends. Say it with me. My silence echoes loud. Write it in the comments right now. Don't just think it, declare it. Because the moment you believe that, you'll never feel powerless in their silence again. And if this woke something inside you, if it reminded you that you hold the real power, then hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and stay with me. Because this isn't just about dating, it's about mastering the mind. And once you do that, no one's silence can ever break you again. Number 3, their ego cracks in the quiet. My friends, let me tell you something that most people never realize until it's too late. Silence is never as simple as it looks. On the surface, silence feels like nothing is happening. You don't text, you don't call, you don't explain yourself. It looks still, like a pond with no ripples. But beneath that still water, the human mind is in chaos. Because silence is not empty, silence is loud. And the louder your silence grows, the more it begins to echo in their mind. Picture an empty room. At first, it seems peaceful, just 4 walls and quiet air. But sit there long enough, and you start to hear things. Every creak in the floor, every faint sound becomes magnified. That's what happens when you stop reaching out. Your absence becomes a noise they can't turn off. They thought ignoring you would give them peace, but instead, it's like they're stuck in that empty room, haunted by echoes of your voice, your laughter, your presence. Every unanswered question circles back, louder each time. Why haven't they texted? Why aren't they fighting for me? Did they really move on? The brain hates unanswered questions, folks. It hates open loops. And when you go silent, you create the biggest loop of all. Psychologists call it the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency of the mind to obsess over unfinished business. And what could feel more unfinished than you suddenly withdrawing your energy? They were used to your messages, your loyalty, your constant reassurance. You were like background music in their life, always there, always playing. But the moment you press stop, the silence crashes in, and they can't ignore it. They may act cool on the outside, post pictures, pretend like nothing's wrong. But on the inside, their thoughts are chasing themselves in circles. Silence forces them to imagine, and imagination is far more powerful than reality. Think about it. When someone doesn't respond, what do? You start filling in the blanks. Maybe they're busy, maybe they're with someone else, maybe they don't care anymore, and each possibility cuts deeper than an actual answer. That's why silence is so dangerous. It makes the mind its own enemy. The one being ignored starts wondering what's wrong with them, but the one doing the ignoring, they start wondering what you're doing in your silence. And the longer it lasts, the more their ego feels threatened. It's like being in a dark hallway with a locked door at the end. They know you're behind it, but they don't know what's happening inside. At first, they might smirk, thinking, I know they'll knock again. But when you don't, doubt creeps in. Why aren't they knocking? Are they building a new world in there without me? Are they happier now that I shut them out? My friends, the unknown is terrifying, and silence creates an unknown that eats at their confidence. Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That's exactly what silence does. It drags their hidden fears out into the open. Their fear of being replaced, their fear of not being enough, their fear of losing control. And suddenly, while they were laughing at your quiet, they're now lying awake at night, haunted by thoughts they can't silence. Your absence becomes a mirror they can't avoid, reflecting every insecurity they tried to bury. And this is why silence makes more noise than words ever could. Words can be denied, argued with, twisted, but silence leaves nothing to fight against. It leaves them alone with themselves, and that's the one battle they can't win. They'll replay your last conversations. They'll scroll through old messages. They'll look for clues in every memory. Did you ever love them? Do you still? Are you gone for good? Silence forces them to write stories in their head. And those stories always end with them realizing they lost something valuable. So don't underestimate the power of not reacting. It may feel like nothing, but it's everything. It's the move that unsettles their mind, breaks their illusions, and forces them to hear echoes they thought they'd silenced. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That's the Stoic's advantage. You don't need to scream to be heard. You don't need to fight to win. Sometimes the most powerful move is to stand still and let their own imagination do the damage for you. So let's claim this truth together, my friends. Say it with me. My silence echoes loud. Write it in the comments right now. Don't just think it, declare it. Because the moment you believe that, you'll never feel powerless in their silence again. And if this woke something inside you, if it reminded you that you hold the real power, then hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and stay with me. Because this isn't just about dating, it's about mastering the mind. And once you do that, no one's silence can ever break you again. Number 4. The psychology of reverse control. My friends, let's dive into something that will open your eyes, the psychology of control. See, when someone ignores you, cheats on you, or rejects you, what they're really trying to do is hold power over your emotions. They want to feel like they're the puppeteer, pulling strings, making you dance. Every unanswered text, every cold silence, every dismissive look, it's meant to remind you that they decide when the game starts and when it ends. And for a while, it works. You chase, you explain, you plead, you do all the things they expect, and their ego swells because in their mind, they've got you exactly where they want you. But here's where the reversal happens, my friends. The moment you stop chasing, the moment you cut the strings, the entire dynamic flips. Because now, they're not the puppeteer. They're the one standing with limp strings in their hands, realizing the puppet has walked away. Imagine the shock of that moment. They thought they were in control, but suddenly the stage is empty. No reaction, no drama, no energy to feed off of. Just silence. That silence becomes their cage, not yours. Psychologists call this perceived control, the belief that one person has the power to influence another's behavior. And when people lose that perceived control, their mind spirals. It's like trying to drive a car, and suddenly the steering wheel stops working. Panic sets in, fear creeps in. The truth is, many people don't crave love as much as they crave control. They want to know they can make you respond, make you cry, make you chase. But when you take that away, when you refuse to give them the reaction they expect, that's when they realize their power was never real. Think of it like a chess game. They make a move, fully expecting you to counter, but instead of playing along, you stand up, walk away, and leave them staring at the board, alone. Their victory disappears instantly because without you the game has no meaning. My friends, this is what true strength looks like. Not in shouting, not in begging, but in refusing to play a game you never needed to join in the first place. And let me ask you, doesn't it feel lighter when you see it this way? Doesn't it make you realize how much of your suffering came from believing their power was real? Stoic philosophy reminds us again and again that no one has control over your mind but you. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And that's the key. The minute you stop handing them your reactions, you reclaim mastery. You stop being the puppet and become the one holding the blade that cuts the strings. Of course, this is difficult. It's natural to want to prove your worth, to demand recognition, to chase answers. That urge is strong, and it whispers, "If I don't react, won't they forget me? Won't they think I don't care?" But here's the paradox. They don't forget. In fact, your silence makes them remember you more. Why? Because they're no longer in control. They don't know what you're thinking, what you're doing, who you're with. Their imagination, as we talked about before, becomes their prison, and all you had to do was step back. Let me give you another metaphor. Picture a dog that barks for attention. As long as you respond, yelling, chasing, throwing it scraps, the barking continues. But when you ignore it long enough, when you show it no reaction, the barking dies down. The same happens with people who play games. They thrive on reaction, on knowing they've rattled you. But when you offer nothing, they feel powerless. And powerlessness is unbearable for someone who built their whole ego on control. This is why your silence, your calm, your refusal to chase becomes the ultimate reversal. They thought they were breaking you, but in reality, you've broken their illusion. They thought they had strings tied to your every move. But now, those strings hang loose, useless, meaningless. And in that emptiness, they're forced to face a truth they've been running from, that you were never dependent on them. It was always the other way around. So don't underestimate this move, my friends. It may feel small, it may feel passive, but it is the most powerful act of self-mastery you can practice. By not chasing, by not reacting, you flip the balance. You become the calm in the storm while they drown in their own loss of control. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. And once you live this truth, no one can ever control you again." Say it with me right now. I cut the strings. Write it in the comments. Declare it so you never forget it. And if this resonated with you, if you felt the power shift even as you listened, then press the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and stay with me, because this is just the beginning. The moment you master the psychology of reverse control, you stop being the chased and become the one who decides the game is over. Number 5. How they secretly check on you. My friends, let me pull back the curtain on something they will never admit out loud. They can act cold, they can play tough, they can pretend that ignoring you has set them free, but deep down, silence eats at them. And when silence grows long enough, curiosity takes over. That's when the games flip. They start checking on you in secret. You may not see it, you may not hear about it, but trust me, it happens. Picture this. At first, they smirk when you go quiet. They tell themselves, "Oh, I knew this would happen. They've finally stopped chasing." They laugh with friends, maybe even brag, "Yeah, they're done. I moved on." But nights have a strange way of stripping the mask away. When the world goes quiet, when there are no distractions left, they pick up their phone. Their thumb hovers over your name. They scroll back through old conversations, rereading messages they once ignored. Why? Because the human mind is addicted to unfinished business. And my friends, you are the biggest unfinished chapter in their story. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency of the mind to obsess over incomplete things. It's why you can't stop humming a song when you only heard half of it. It's why cliffhanger endings keep you hooked. And it's why they can't stop thinking about you once you withdraw. They expected drama, closure, final words. They expected you to chase until the end. But instead, you vanished into silence. That left the story open, the door unlocked, the sentence unfinished, and their mind can't let it go. So what do? They start looking for pieces of you wherever they can find them. They check your social media, silently, carefully, like thieves in the night. Maybe they don't like your posts, maybe they don't comment, but don't be fooled. They're watching, they're scrolling through your pictures, looking for signs of change. Who are you with? Do you look happier? Have you moved on? They search for answers in pixels and captions because they can't ask you directly anymore. And it doesn't stop there. Some of them turn to mutual friends. Casually, almost in passing, they'll ask, "Hey, how are they doing? Still the same? Seeing anyone new?" They'll disguise it as small talk, but underneath, it's panic. They want to know if your silence means freedom or replacement. And here's the irony, folks. They were the ones who ignored you, who thought you weren't enough. But now, in your absence, they can't stand the thought of someone else seeing the value they overlooked. Think about how powerful that is. The very person who thought they could treat you as disposable is now digging through shadows to see if you've moved on. They replay your laughter in their head. They scroll back to old pictures you sent. They reread words they once dismissed. Like ghosts trapped in a house they built, they haunt the memories they thought they could escape. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's exactly what's happening to them. They don't even realize why they're checking. They'll tell themselves it's just curiosity, just boredom, just habit. But in truth, it's obsession. It's the unconscious screaming, "You lost something irreplaceable." They can't close the book because you refuse to write the ending for them. And now, every page of silence forces them to imagine the next chapter, and it terrifies them that they're no longer in it. So don't believe for a second that they've forgotten you. Don't buy into the lie that silence means you've been erased. No, my friends, silence is what makes you unforgettable. Silence is what keeps you alive in their mind long after you've left their life. And while they're out there checking in secret, you're not even looking back. You're moving forward, building, growing, becoming untouchable. That's the true beauty of this story. You no longer need their attention, but they can't stop giving it to you, even in hidden ways. So let's ground this in a truth you'll never forget. Say it with me. They still check on me. Write it in the comments. Declare it with confidence, because it's not just wishful thinking. It's psychology. It's human nature. It's the echo of your presence they can't shake off. And if this truth woke something inside you, press that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and stay with me. Because the deeper we go into this, the more you'll realize they never stopped thinking about you. They never stopped looking for you. And sooner or later, that obsession will pull them back to the very place they thought they left behind. Number 6. The Stoic move, rebuilding without announcement. My friends, let me share with you one of the most powerful truths you'll ever carry. Strength does not need to announce itself. The world we live in loves noise. It loves drama, display, attention, and proof. People will ignore you, reject you, even betray you, because they assume you'll be sitting there in the ruins, waiting for them to turn back and give you scraps of validation. They count on your weakness. They expect the tears, the chasing, the long explanations, the desperate attempts to remind them of your worth. And when you give them that, their ego feasts. But the moment you go quiet, not in defeat, but in discipline, you begin the greatest transformation of your life. Think of a seed buried beneath the soil. On the surface, it looks like nothing is happening. People may walk by and see only dirt. They'll laugh. They'll dismiss it. They'll say, "See, nothing grows there." But underground, away from the eyes of doubters, something unstoppable is forming. Roots are digging deep, strength is building, life is stirring, and one day, when the time is right, the seed breaks through the surface with a force that cannot be ignored. That's what you are when you stop chasing and start rebuilding without announcement. Silent, unseen, underestimated, until the day your growth bursts forth, undeniable and untouchable. Now here's the beauty of this Stoic move. It goes against everything they thought they knew about you. They believed they had you figured out. They expected you to crumble, to beg, to wait at the door they slammed shut. They thought silence meant paralysis, that you were frozen in heartbreak, unable to move forward. But what they never considered was that your silence was not the absence of life. It was the beginning of growth. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That's exactly what rebuilding in silence is. While they shout, you stay still. While they play games, you build foundations. While they perform for attention, you create something solid and real. But I won't pretend it's easy, my friends. When you've been ignored, when you've been left behind, the first instinct is to scream, "Look at me, see what you lost." You want them to know how much you've changed, how strong you've become, how bright your future now looks without them. It's tempting to post about it, to show it off, to throw your growth in their face. But here's where Stoic wisdom steps in. The true power lies not in announcing your transformation, but in embodying it. The Stoics remind us that external validation means nothing. What matters is mastery over your own mind. So when you rebuild in silence, you're not just proving a point, you're disciplining yourself, teaching your soul that your strength doesn't depend on their recognition. And here's the irony. Silence always draws more curiosity than noise. When you stop explaining yourself, stop posting about your every move, stop chasing for attention, their mind begins to itch. They start asking questions they never asked when you were still accessible. What are they doing? Why are they so quiet? Are they happier now? Did they replace me? Did they forget me? The less you show, the more they imagine. And imagination, as we've already uncovered, is far more haunting than reality. It's like watching someone leave a party early without saying a word. Everyone else keeps dancing, laughing, but after a while, whispers spread. Where did they go? Why did they leave? Are they with someone else? Their absence becomes louder than anyone else's presence. That's you, folks. Your silence becomes the topic. Your disappearance becomes the question mark they can't erase. And all the while, you're not sitting idle. You're building. You're learning new skills, chasing new goals, reconnecting with your true self. You're healing in ways they'll never see until it's too late. Carl Jung once wrote, "What you resist not only persists, but grows in size." They resisted giving you the love and respect you deserved, thinking it would make you shrink. But what they didn't realize is that in silence, you grow. In silence, your spirit expands beyond the cage they thought they left you in. Every step you take in rebuilding, whether it's getting healthier, pursuing your dreams, or simply finding peace in your own company, becomes part of a transformation they never anticipated. Let me tell you a story. Imagine a sculptor working on a block of marble. Day after day, they chip away, but to the outside world, it looks like nothing is happening. People pass by and scoff. "Still working on that? Doesn't look like much to me." But the sculptor keeps going, quietly, steadily, piece by piece. And then one day, the shape emerges, a masterpiece that takes everyone's breath away. That's what your rebuilding is. They may not notice in the beginning. They may mock, they may dismiss, they may assume nothing is happening, but when your masterpiece is revealed, when you rise as someone stronger, calmer, wiser, they'll realize they underestimated you all along. And the psychology behind it makes this even sweeter. Humans are wired to crave what they can't have, to obsess over what they can't see. When you were chasing, you were predictable. They knew exactly where you were, exactly how you felt. But when you withdrew and started focusing inward, you became unpredictable. And unpredictability breeds obsession. They'll check your profile, they'll ask mutual friends, they'll replay old conversations, all because they can't figure you out anymore. You became the one variable in their life they can't control, and that drives their ego mad. But here's the deeper truth, my friends. This isn't about making them miss you, not really. That may be a side effect, but the true purpose of rebuilding without announcement is to set yourself free, to no longer live for their validation, their attention, their recognition, to step into a version of yourself that doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. That's the real Stoic victory. Not that they come back begging, but that you no longer care whether they do. You've become complete without their presence. And let me be crystal clear, they will notice. Maybe not right away, maybe not in the way you hope, but silence always leaves a trail of questions. One day, when they least expect it, they'll see a glimpse of the new you, stronger, sharper, untouchable, and in that moment, the regret will hit. Because while they were busy underestimating you, you were busy transforming into someone they'll never have access to again. So when the urge comes to announce your growth, to prove your progress, to rub it in their face, pause. Remember the seed. Remember the sculptor. Remember that true strength doesn't need applause. It doesn't scream. It doesn't chase. It doesn't beg to be seen. It grows, it builds, it transforms, and when it finally emerges, it is undeniable. Now let's seal this truth together. Say it with me, folks. I grow in silence. Write it in the comments right now. Claim it, because the more you affirm it, the more you live it. And if this truth has stirred something deep inside you, then hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and stay with me. Because the journey doesn't end here. This is just the beginning of your rise. And when the world finally sees what you've been building in silence, they'll realize you were never broken. You were only becoming unstoppable. Number 7, the return they can't avoid. My friends, let's talk about one of the strangest ironies in human behavior, the return they can't avoid. You see, when someone rejects you, cheats you, or dismisses your worth, they often walk away with a sense of pride. In their mind, they've won. They tell themselves, I had the upper hand, I was the one who left. They'll never stop thinking about me. And in those early days, they might even laugh at your silence, convinced it's proof that you're weak. But the truth, the deep psychological truth, is that the very thing they thought gave them power is what eventually takes it away. And that's why, sooner or later, they circle back. Think about it. People crave certainty. They love to know they matter, that they hold some kind of sway over others. When you were there, giving your time, attention, and energy, you gave them that certainty. You were their mirror, reflecting their importance back at them. But the moment you stop chasing, the moment you cut off their supply of validation, a crack opens in that mirror. At first, they ignore it. They distract themselves with new people, new games, shallow pleasures, but cracks have a way of spreading, and eventually they can't ignore the empty space you left behind. That's when the doubt creeps in. What if they've moved on? What if they don't need me anymore? What if someone else sees their worth now? My friends, these questions are poison to the ego. They eat at the self-image of the one who rejected you, because suddenly they're no longer certain they mattered as much as they believed, and the human mind cannot stand uncertainty. That's why, even when they swore they'd never look back, they start circling back. Not because you begged, not because you chased, but because your absence became the loudest presence in their life. Let me tell you a story. Imagine someone leaves a house they once lived in. They slam the door behind them, certain they'll never return. They walk away proudly, believing the house will fall apart without them. But as weeks pass, they start wondering, is the house still standing? Did someone else move in? Is it warmer, brighter, more alive than when I left? Curiosity turns into longing, longing turns into doubt, and doubt drives them back to the very door they once abandoned. That's the psychology of the return. They come back not because they value the house, but because the thought of losing it forever gnaws at their soul. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists." They resisted giving you the love and respect you deserved, but your silence made that very absence persist in their mind. They resisted seeing your worth, but the moment you stopped handing it to them, they couldn't stop looking for it elsewhere, and failing. And that's when the truth hits them. They didn't walk away from someone ordinary. They walked away from someone rare. And rarity is something the human spirit can't forget. Now, let's be clear, my friends. The Stoic perspective reminds us that their return doesn't define your worth. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." That means you don't need their apology, their validation, or their presence to heal. Your power is internal, your silence, your growth, your peace. These are yours, regardless of whether they ever return. But the irony is this: when you no longer need them, that's when they come. When you've rebuilt yourself without announcement, when you've grown stronger in the shadows, when you've become untouchable in your own right, that's when their ego cracks wide open. And don't misunderstand, they won't always return with humility. Sometimes it starts subtly, a like on your picture, a casual message, "Hey, how've you been?" A question through a mutual friend. They test the waters, trying to see if the door is still open. Other times, it's more desperate. They show up suddenly, trying to revive conversations, reminding you of old memories, acting as if they've just realized what they had. But no matter how it looks, the pattern is the same. Your absence created a void, and that void pulled them back. It's like gravity. You are the center they once took for granted. When you pulled away, they thought they could float freely forever, but eventually the pull of what they lost drags them back down, whether they admit it or not. And here's the most empowering part. You don't need them anymore. You don't need their return, their recognition, or their apology. You've already built your freedom. You've already claimed your power. So if they return, it's not because you begged, it's because they couldn't escape. Let me give you another metaphor. Picture a magnet. When you were chasing, the magnet was flipped the wrong way. Your energy repelled them. But when you stopped chasing, when you turned inward and began focusing on yourself, you flipped the magnet. Suddenly, without you even trying, they feel the pull. It's not manipulation. It's not a game. It's psychology. People are drawn to what they can't control, to what they can't fully understand, to what they suddenly realize is slipping away, and your silence, your growth, your absence makes you that magnetic force. And yes, my friends, they miss you. Don't let their bravado fool you. Don't let their performances on social media trick you. They replay conversations. They remember the way you showed up for them. They feel the gap where your energy used to be. They may cover it up with new distractions, but the human heart always circles back to what it couldn't replace. They come back not because you were weak, but because you became untouchable. But here's where your stoic strength must rise higher than ever. When they return, it's not about whether they miss you, it's about whether you've outgrown them. You are no longer the person they ignored. You are no longer the one who begged. You are the seed that grew into a tree, the sculptor who carved strength out of pain, the storm they never saw coming. And while they're circling back, wondering if they still matter, you stand in a place where their presence no longer decides your value. So don't wait for their return, my friends. Don't make it your goal, because the greatest irony is that when you stop waiting, when you stop hoping, when you stop chasing, that's exactly when they show up. And when they do, you'll realize the truth. They needed you more than you ever needed them. Say it with me now. They return, I rise. Write it in the comments, claim it, let it sink deep into your spirit. And if this truth has lit a fire inside you, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and stay with me. Because this journey isn't about proving yourself to them. It's about becoming someone they can't forget, someone they can't replace, someone they will always circle back to, even when it's too late. And that, my friends, is the return they can't avoid. Number 8. Your reaction is the real power. My friends, let's bring everything together, because this is where the truth finally hits hardest. You've been through rejection, betrayal, and the ache of being ignored. You've fought the urge to chase, to beg, to prove your worth. You've sat in silence while your heart screamed for answers. And maybe along the way, you wondered if that silence was weakness, if your lack of reaction meant you were losing. But here's what I need you to hear and carry with you for the rest of your life. Your reaction, or rather, your lack of reaction, is the real power. See, the world will always try to pull you into games. They want noise, they want chaos, they want proof they still control you. Every ignored call, every unanswered message, every cold look was meant to provoke a reaction. They wanted to see you shatter. They wanted you to break your dignity just to get their attention, because to them, your begging would have been confirmation. Yes, I still matter. Yes, I still hold the strings. That's how fragile their ego really is. It needs your pain as proof of its importance. But when you withheld that reaction, when you chose silence instead of chasing, calm instead of chaos, you flipped the entire script. Suddenly, their ego had nothing to feed on. Imagine a fire burning hot, waiting for logs to be thrown in. But you didn't bring wood. You walked away. The fire sputters, cracks, and eventually fades into embers. That's their ego, without your reaction. And here's the irony, my friends. They thought they could laugh at your silence, but silence is not emptiness. Silence is a mirror. It reflects their own actions back at them. Every time they go to check your profile, every time they replay a memory, every time they wonder why you haven't reached out, the mirror stares back at them with one truth. You lost someone who no longer needs you. They can run from your words, they can dismiss your feelings, but they cannot escape the mirror of silence. Think of it like standing in a hall of echoes. You say nothing, but the emptiness amplifies everything they've done. Their cruelty, their arrogance, their indifference. It all comes back to them louder than before. And that's why silence is the ultimate reaction. Because it's not about proving them wrong with arguments or begging them to see your worth. It's about letting them wrestle with themselves in the quiet you left behind. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." That's exactly why your silence is so devastating to them. It forces them to confront parts of themselves they were trying to avoid. The guilt, the fear, the insecurity. When you don't react, they can't drown those feelings out with your energy. They have to sit with their own reflection, and trust me, it's far more painful than anything you could ever say to them. And yes, my friends, I know what you're still wondering. Will they come back? The answer is yes. Sooner or later, they will. Not because you chased, not because you begged, but because your absence was louder than any words you could have spoken. They'll come back with questions, with excuses, with small tests to see if you still care. Some may come back quietly, a simple message like, "Hey, how are you?" Others may come back more dramatically, acting as if they've just realized what they lost. But one way or another, they circle back, because silence leaves them with no closure, and the human mind cannot rest without closure. But here's the real twist. By the time they return, you'll already hold the power. You won't be the same person they left behind. You won't be waiting at the door, desperate for their attention. You'll be stronger, sharper, calmer, anchored in yourself. They'll come back thinking they're the ones making a choice, but the truth is, you'll be the one who decides. This is where Stoicism shines the brightest. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. You can't control when or how they come back, but you can control how you meet their return. And when you meet it with calm, when you realize you no longer need their presence, that's when you finally see how much you've grown. Because the goal was never to win them back. The goal was to win yourself back." Let me give you a final metaphor. Imagine a stage play. They thought they were the star, and you were just part of the supporting cast. They left the stage arrogantly, thinking the play would end without them. But you kept going. You rewrote the script. You became the main character of your own story. And when they finally peek behind the curtain, expecting to see you broken, they're stunned to see a whole new performance, one where they're not even in the script anymore. That's the return they can't escape, and that's the moment you realize your reaction was always the real power. So let me end with this, my friends. Your silence wasn't weakness. It was the mirror they couldn't escape. They will come back, but by then you will already have the strength, the clarity, and the freedom to choose whether they even deserve a place in your new story. Now, let's seal this truth into your soul. Say it with me. My silence destroys their ego. Write it in the comments right now. Don't just whisper it, declare it, claim it, make it yours. Because when you affirm it, you embody it. And if this message resonated with you, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and stay with me. Because this journey isn't just about heartbreak. It's about transformation. It's about becoming untouchable. And my friends, you've already begun.